What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another Euro 2024 fantasy video. In this one, it's some of my final thoughts ahead of Matchday 2. So I'm going to go through a bunch of your questions, talk about the latest on Mbappé, and go through my team as well, because I've got Mbappé, and now I need to decide what to do with him. So if you enjoyed the video, give it a like, hit that subscribe button, and let's get into it. So the first thing we have to talk about is Kylian Mbappé, who picked up an injury in last night's game against Austria, the highest owned player in Euro 2024 fantasy, and it has now been confirmed that it's a broken nose, which I think most of us expected after watching the replays and seeing the pictures last night. So a tweet from last night said, Kylian Mbappé is in hospital at the moment with a broken nose after his clash with Danzo. Uncertainty over the rest of the Euros for him and whether he needs an operation or not. Now, I don't think at the time recording there's been anything official that's come out, but it doesn't sound like he's going to need an operation. It doesn't sound like he's going to miss the whole of the Euros. And Mbappé himself has tweeted to say, any ideas for Mass? He tweeted it in French. I'm not going to try and pronounce that correctly, but in English translated on Google, it said, any ideas for Mass? So he is going to play a part in this tournament. He is going to have to wear a mask. How quickly he comes back, we don't yet know. My assumption would be that he's almost certainly going to miss the Netherlands game. Can France get out of the groups without Mbappé? Absolutely. Would they rather have him? Of course they would. But I think he won't play against the Netherlands, because even if he doesn't need an operation, it may still need treatment, right? It may need a little bit of a chance before he plays contact sport again. Whether or not he then plays the last group game will probably depend on how the Netherlands game goes. And of course, just what the medical experts say as well. But I have a feeling we won't see Mbappé again until the knockout rounds. And just to clarify once more, there's been no official news on that. I'm not a medical expert. That is just my guess. So if you're thinking about using a limitless or wildcard in Matchday 2, I would not include Mbappé. And if you've got him like I have, I'm considering selling him this week as one of my transfers. And I'll talk about my specific team later on. If you are thinking about getting rid, then there's some obvious players to go for. Whoever you don't have out of Lukaku, Kane and Ronaldo. Haven't seen Ronaldo play yet at the time of recording. Obviously, Lukaku and Kane disappointed, but I still think they're really good options. And of course, the French team will now have an extra spot to fill if Mbappe's missing out. My assumption will be that Giroud will play in that number 9 position, and they'll just have Thuram and Dembele wide like they did last night with Griezmann behind. But that's not a guarantee. I think if I was buying a French player, it'd probably be Griezmann, I think, at 9 million. He's almost certainly going to start. I don't think he will play in that number 9 role. I think he'll continue being their number 10. But the beauty about him is he's nailed on to start. He's obviously a fantastic player. Takes a lot of set pieces. And with Mbappé out, he would also presumably be on penalties as well. Because I think before Mbappé, Griezmann was first choice for France. So he's someone to consider too. And if you're looking at maybe cheaper options that have a good fixture, you got Mitrovic and Šeško who are playing against each other. Slovenia versus Serbia. I would definitely look at that. Havertz, if you don't already have triple up on Germany, playing against Hungary. Trying to think who else there is. Dovbyk, potentially against Slovakia. Obviously, Ukraine lost their first game against Romania. I think they're better than that performance showed. And obviously, Slovakia did really well against Belgium, but I still think Dovbyk could be an option. Lewandowski, possibly. There's a question about him later. We need to wait and see whether he's going to be fit first. I think that's a little bit of a risk. And then obviously Ronaldo and Lukaku I already mentioned. So there's plenty of options to change Mbappé. I think in this short format, it's probably not worth taking the risk. And I would transfer him out, or if you're using a chip, just not include him. But again, no official news just yet, but I'm sure it will come out hopefully before tomorrow's Matchday 2 deadline. So this next question simply says, should we stick with Kane? And a lot of people ask me this, is it too knee-jerk to get rid of him already? And I would say probably. I think ultimately it depends on what your chip strategy is. If you're using one of Limitless or Wildcard in Matchday 2, maybe you could make a case to go without him. But if you're just using transfers, I would say that most people have a better transfer to make than to get rid of Harry Kane. Was he good against Serbia? Not really. He wasn't heavily involved, didn't have a huge amount of chances, just that one header from the Bowen assist in the second half, which on another day might have gone in, and then we might not even have some of these questions. But has Harry Kane become a bad player and a bad fantasy option after just one game? I would say probably not. His record at club level and international level speaks for itself. And already I've seen quite a few people saying that actually maybe Serbia is the toughest game England are going to have in the groups, and Denmark might be slightly easier. I'm not sure I necessarily agree with that, but I think he will get chances in this game. He's on penalties. He's nailed on pretty much for 90 minutes every single game as well. Like, who are you going for instead that is worth using one of your transfers on? Most people have probably got another problem they need to deal with instead, an Mbappé injury, for example. I think you stick with Kane. And to be honest with you, even if I was using my Limitless chip this week, I would probably go for him. I think in the draft that I put out a couple of days ago, I had Mbappé, Ronaldo and Lukaku, I believe, and then Bellingham in midfield ready for that captaincy. But obviously Mbappe's not an option now, and I'm pretty sure I would just put Harry Kane straight in, and I would captain him over Bellingham. As good as Bellingham was, great for ball recoveries, obviously got the goal as well, and potential for clean sheet points, I would still go Harry Kane. And look, it is a short format game. We don't have a huge amount to go on, right? We're all trying to base our decisions based off the first match, I should say. But we don't want to overreact too much. So I would say for most people, there is no need to use a transfer on Harry Kane. Give him a bit of time and hope he can get something against Denmark. So would an upgrade from Gündoğan to Wirtz or Musiala be worth it? And I think the theme of this video is going to be consider what the biggest impact is that you can have with your transfers. And I would say for most people, they've probably got a bigger issue to deal with than worrying about Gündoğan. I do think that both Wirtz and Musiala are better options. They're much more likely to get you a goal or an assist from open play, but obviously they're more expensive as well. And part of the reason that a lot of us went for Gündoğan is because he's the cheapest attacking option at 7 million, playing number 10, and on penalties as well. I know Havertz took the first one, but I'm pretty sure Gündoğan will take the next one as long as he's fully fit and obviously on the pitch. So it depends whether you've got anything else to do in your team. Like for my setup, for example, my squad, Lunin in goal, bit of a worry. Mbappé injury. Szoboszlai's got Germany. I know some people are worried about Trent. I'll talk about him in a minute. There's other issues to worry about. And also, if you're not using a chip, you need to find some money from somewhere. So unless you can downgrade another position to get Wirtz at 7.5 or Musiala at 8.5, I just wouldn't really worry about it. I know they got the double digits in the first game, but on another day, Gündoğan could have done the same. And I think it's entirely possible that he does that against Hungary. So again, for most people, I just wouldn't bother using a transfer on Gündoğan. If you're wildcarding or limitless, or using your limitless chip, I should say, yes, I would try and fit Wirtz and or Musiala in instead. So if you're using all your chips in the group stage, which is the best strategy? Wildcard Matchday 2 and Limitless Matchday 3, or the other way around? So Limitless Matchday 2 and then Wildcard Matchday 3. Now my instinct is that Limitless is better in Matchday 2 because there's going to be less rotation. If the top teams are going to rotate, which is usually where you want most of your players from, it will be in Matchday 3 when they've already got 4 or 6 points on the board. And obviously, if someone like Ronaldo gets rotated for Portugal or Harry Kane for England, the players that are going to replace them are always going to be cheaper. And therefore, it's easier to put a team together without unlimited budget. The only thing you can do to make sure of this is put together your preferred Limitless or Wildcard team for Matchday 2, then do the same for Matchday 3, and see which one you prefer, and also which one's the most over budget. So a couple of days ago, I put out a Limitless Matchday 2 video. That team was 10 million euro over budget. If I put together my Limitless Matchday 3 team, it's only 5 million over budget. There's more places I'm willing to cut to get value players in, and therefore the Limitless is probably better in Matchday 2. Also, depending on how you've set your team up for Matchday 1, it might be the case that you use the Limitless in Matchday 2 and you get to Matchday 3 and you think, well, actually, there's not going to be as much rotation as I thought. My team actually looks pretty good for the last group game. I'm going to save my wild card till later on. I think that's less of an importance because at this point, most people have already decided whether or not to use both chips in the group. But I think ultimately, Limitless Matchday 2 is probably slightly better. Like if we look at the fixtures, like where the cheaper options are going to come from, in Matchday 3, I'm just trying to think here. Like Hungary, for example, playing Scotland, they've got cheap defenders. If Spain rotate, I mean, even if Spain don't rotate, right, they've got two 4.5 million defenders playing. They're up against Albania. Italy, DeMarco, 5 million if he doesn't get rotated against Croatia. Netherlands, Austria even against Netherlands, right? You could pick up Baumgartner or Sabitzer. The pie up front for the Netherlands is only 7.5. They've got cheaper options. Similarly with France, if they rotate, if Mbappe's not in the team. So I think, looking at it, match day 3 is probably going to be slightly easier to put a team together. But ultimately, I don't think it's going to make a huge amount of difference. I think either way, right, even if you were to use wildcard match day 2, you'll find those cheaper options to put in. Like, for example, okay, Germany have got Hungary. We know pretty much they're going to use the same team that they used against Scotland. Mittelstadt is 4 million. Gündoğan is 7. Havertz is 7.5. You got 3 really good value players there. If you were to wildcard match day 2, you could probably still put a pretty good team together. Switzerland, right? You've got Cher against Scotland. You've got Vargas against Scotland for 6 million midfielder. There's lots of cheap options. Gay for England's only 4.5. It probably doesn't make a huge amount of difference, but my instinct is that Limitless Match Day 2 is probably slightly better. So what do you think of Trent Alexander-Arnold to Josko Vardio? And I will talk about that transfer in just a second, but I want to talk more specifically about Trent first of all, because a lot of people seem worried about whether or not he's going to start against Denmark after the performance against Serbia. The first thing I will say, I don't think Gareth Southgate will overreact like Twitter has, right? I'm sure other nations probably experience this, but the overreaction to England games is always incredible to watch, right? We spend the whole build-up saying that Foden's got to be in the team no matter what, and now people want him out. Trent's got to play even if it's in midfield. Now people want him out. Southgate is not going to be acting like your average Twitter manager, and I do think the team will be exactly the same against Denmark as it was against Serbia, because yes, the performance overall wasn't fantastic, and England need to play better if they want to go far in this tournament, but also for the first 30 minutes it was quite good. Trent's in there for a reason, to have that creativity that maybe Declan Rice and Jude Bellingham don't have. And defensively, yes, Trent is not the best, but England's back four is pretty decent. Rice is great defensively, and so is Bellingham, and they are in there to kind of protect him as well. Now, I personally do think by the end of the tournament, at whatever point England get knocked out, obviously the hope for me will be that they win it, but I'm not so sure about that. I do think that Gallagher will be first choice, because defensively he's just better, and there's a lot of energy there in terms of pressing and stuff like that, and I just cannot imagine Southgate keeping Trent in the team against like a France, for example, when you've got Gallagher there instead. But I think right now in the groups, he's in there for that creativity and to unlock defences that sit deep, and I think he will be given another go. And also, if England do play really well over the next few matches, maybe he will keep him in for those tougher games. Bearing in mind, the last time we played France in a tournament of the World Cup, it was Jordan Henderson in there, who I appreciate has always played midfielder, so it's a bit different to Trent. But it's not like Trent is terrible in comparison at the point where Henderson is in his career, etc. Anyway, I'm getting on to England too much. The long and the short of it is, I think there's a good chance that Trent will be replaced by Gallagher long term in the tournament. But right now, I think it'll be the same team against Denmark, despite all the chaos and the discussion that's going on right now. In terms of Trent to Vardio, this is just like getting rid of Kane or getting rid of Gündoğan for me. If you've got nothing else to do, then Vardio in Matchday 2 probably is better than Trent. He is, I wouldn't say as attacking, but he can be attacking. I think Albania is definitely an easier fixture than Denmark. But I will go back to what I've said many times. The England defence is good, better than Croatia, and they won't give up a huge amount of chances to Denmark. So Trent is, in my eyes, right, if you think he's going to start, there is no massive rush to get rid of him. And if you think he's going to get benched, I just wouldn't be so sure. I really wouldn't. And look, the deadline is tomorrow, like Wednesday, 2 p.m. UK time. We're probably not going to get any word from journalists beforehand about what the team might be on Thursday, but it's possible. England journalists do like to talk about the team, and so far I've seen no discussion about him missing out. I've seen people speculate that they would do that. They'd maybe replace Trent or Foden, but in terms of this is what Southgate's going to do, there's been nothing, and I think the calm England fans are just expecting the same team, and I think Trent will be in it, and therefore I think he's a really good option for Matchday 2, and there is no priority to sell into Vardio. But Vardio is also great for Matchday 2, so if you want to do it and you've got nothing else to worry about transfer-wise, go ahead. So who are the best Switzerland options in midfield and defence? And I have to say that I was impressed with Switzerland against Hungary in Matchday 1. Maybe it should have been an expected performance, because Switzerland are always very good at tournaments, really experienced side, but still, really good match for them. and they got to play Scotland in Matchday 2, who are probably the weakest team in the group. Now, in terms of defence, it's pretty easy, right? Akanji is nailed on, and probably the one to go for if, for example, you're making a transfer in Matchday 2, you've got 5 million to spare, and then you're using a chip in Matchday 3. So it's only Matchday 2 you're worried about. You've got 5 million spare, therefore you're going for Akanji. But you can get Fabian Schär, who, as far as I know, is just as nailed on, but costs 0.5 less, and also has a pretty good goal and assist record at national and club level. So there's no point, in my opinion, unless it just so happens you have 5 million spare, to go for Akanji over Schär. I think you could maybe even make a case that Schär is better anyway. You've also got Widmer, who plays right wing back, the same price as Schär, 4.5 million. Doesn't always make 90 minutes. He played 68 against Hungary. But obviously, if they had the clean sheet locked in, and he went past the 60th minute and got subbed off, that would look a lot better. So I quite like him as a punt, but the safe value option is definitely Fabian Schär. In terms of the attackers, if I just bring them up here, Abisha was the one that got a goal and an assist at 5 million. I think it was that long-range shot against Hungary. He's 27. That's his first goal and first assist from what I can see for Switzerland. So I'm not sure. I don't know much about him, if I'm honest, right? That's probably the first time I've seen him play. He doesn't have a record that strikes me that he's going to get lots of goals and assists. If you're a Switzerland fan, I've got that wrong. Please let me know in the comments below. But just having a quick look, I'm not sure that's going to be the case. Dua played up front. I think, was that his first start? I could be wrong there. But either way, he got a goal. But he came off after 68 minutes. And I do think there's a problem with... And sorry, he is listed as a forward. I know you said midfielders, but I'll just talk about the whole attack. There is a bit of chance for rotation, I think, because Mbolo obviously came on. And if he's fit enough to start games, he will play instead. So right now for midfield, you're maybe looking at Xhaka, who's absolutely nailed on, quite creative, will take some set pieces as well. Obviously decent enough, or could be decent enough for ball recoveries. He only got 2 ball recoveries in total in the game against Hungary. But he's a bit of an all-rounder, I would say, and got player of the match. So he's not going to be super attacking from open play, but you know he's going to start, and he is going to deliver some decent balls into the box. Maybe not one for goals, but possibly assists, and only 6 million. But I think the one that would be interesting to me is Vargas, because he kind of played almost up front, and is only 6 million. 0% ownership. I'm sure some people have got him, but not enough to trigger the 1%. So super low owned, only 6 million, listed as a midfielder, but playing really advanced. But again, I'm not sure what it's going to be like for rotation when everyone's fit. But if it's a Matchday 2 punt only, that is probably where I would look. So Schär in defence, Vargas in midfield. But if you want to go super safe, probably someone like Xhaka instead. But I do think Scotland Matchday 2 looks pretty decent for Switzerland. So at what score do you stick with your captain rather than taking a risk with a new one? Now, I did do a whole video on this the other day, which you can go and check out if you want to. And ultimately, I think if you hit double digits, that's more than a reasonable position to stick with, right? So if someone on the first day of Matchday 2 gets you 10 points or more, it's very much reasonable to stick with that. Absolutely, if you want to gamble to go for someone hitting a brace or a hat-trick and getting player of the match and stuff like that and getting 13 plus points, you absolutely can do it. Depends how you want to play. But 10 or more is probably where I would stick. But also, just to kind of go over a couple of things again, it depends at what point you get that score, right? If you get it in on the first day and you've got a bunch of good captains to come, you might want to twist a few times. But if you get 10 points and there's only one more day left, I'm sticking. I'm not going to risk it on one more player. But the reason I wanted to answer this question, despite doing a video on it the other day, is because I think Matchday 2 is quite interesting. So instead of like in Matchday 1 where you've got 5 possible captains, it's only 4. And the way the fixtures fall, there's not a huge amount of great captains after Matchday 1 in terms of the options you have plus the fixtures they've got. So opening day, most people are going to go for a Germany attacker, Gündoğan, Wirtz or Musiala. Some people might go for Mittelstadt. Some people might have a Switzerland attacker, possibly a Croatian one instead. But I think most people are going to go Germany. On the second day on Thursday, Spain are playing Italy. So that's going to almost rule out captaincy for most people. Slovenia versus Serbia might be okay, Šeško or Mitrovic, etc. But most people don't own those players. So then you're left with England. Okay, so Kane, Bellingham, Trent, whoever it might be, not a bad option. But then on the Friday, if Mbappe's not available, suddenly the captaincy options don't look so great, okay? Maybe you go for a Griezmann or a Dembele against Netherlands. Maybe you risk Depay or, I don't know, Dumfries against France. Sudakov for Ukraine, Dovbyk potentially, the Austrian midfielders like Sabitzer, Baumgartner. There's options there, but there's not a standout big hitter with a really good fixture. So the point I'm trying to make is, for match day 2, I'd probably be less likely to twist on a high score than I would have been in match day 1. I know a lot of people disagree, and that's fine, but if I'd had Wirtz in match day 1 with 4 more captains to go with good fixtures, I would have probably twisted to go for that gamble. If I get 10 points from Gündoğan for match day 2, I will probably stick 10 points or more. Because, okay, Kane against Denmark's not bad, and I may well have Griezmann. I'll talk about that in a minute. But Griezmann is just not as nice as it would be to have Mbappé against Netherlands. Plus, it's a tough enough fixture. And I don't want to have to get all the way to the final day where players like Lukaku, De Bruyne, Fernandes and Ronaldo are all playing on the same day, so you can only captain one of them. So as much as it depends on how many points you get and what captains you got left, you really need to think about how happy you are with the options afterwards and what you think they might get. And the points to twist should come down as you go through the days as well. So if you don't twist, if you do twist on 10 points on the first day, you probably don't twist on 10 points on the third day when there's only one more captain left. And it might be, I haven't actually looked at match day 3, but perhaps it's similar. So you've got another 4 captains. So potentially, again, you've probably got German attackers against Switzerland. You've got, I mean, maybe if you're on Limitless, or maybe if you just got some, maybe Spanish attackers against Albania, Jamal, Williams, Morata, etc. Then France have got Poland, so if Mbappe's back, great. If not, maybe an England player against Slovenia. And on the last day, again, you've got Ronaldo, Fernandes, Lukaku, etc. So I'm depending on who I think is going to get rotated, I might twist a little bit in match day 3 because some of the fixtures afterwards are good. Spain against Albania, France against Poland, England against Slovenia, Belgium against Ukraine, Portugal against Georgia. But match day 2, I think it's a little bit riskier to twist a high score. But that's just my opinion. If you want to gamble, you can absolutely do that. But ultimately, there is no magic number. What I will say is you have to decide straight away whether you're sticking or twisting. Because if you're going to twist later on in the match day, you might as well go for every captain in between as well, just to see if you get a big score. So would you consider Lewandowski, if he's available, as an Mbappé replacement? And I think the simple answer is probably not, right? He's 9.5 million, which feels expensive. And I appreciate that from Mbappé, you can go to any other forward you want. But still, 9.5 does feel pricey. And also, I'd be worried about his fitness. Even if it's confirmed that he can start that game, is he going to be able to play the 90 minutes? And in the first game against the Netherlands, he was on the bench and didn't come on. And for a period of that second half, Poland were doing really well and it was 1-1. And I just thought to myself, if Lewandowski was anywhere close to being fit, surely he would come on. And maybe they just thought, the Netherlands is probably not a game we can win anyway. We'll try and get the 3 points against Austria. We'll save him for that. It's a possibility, but that would worry me quite a lot. And I just think, you know, if you don't own Kane, you can go straight to him from Mbappe. Even if you want to go cheaper, Ronaldo's 10, Lukaku's 9. And I know that Lukaku didn't do great in that game yesterday. Hugely frustrating for him in terms of the goals that were ruled out. But he will get chances. And as bad as Belgium maybe were, you wouldn't expect them to necessarily play like that again. And if anything, they're not any worse than like a Poland. So I'd just be worried about his fitness. And at 9.5, I just don't think I would go there. Also, by the way, Austria are not pushovers. They played really well against France. And I actually think that Austria will probably be the more likely to get the 3 points from that game. So due to fitness and stuff like that mostly, but also his price, Lewandowski is just not a consideration for me. So if a goalkeeper gets 4 points, would you sub them out? And I think this was a position that the Bruggen owners were in match day 1, where he was on 4 points and they had another goalkeeper on the bench. I haven't been in this position yet, but I think I would probably stick. Like I spoke about on the captaincy video, if you're twisting off 10 points to try and get 13 or more, you're maybe only risking like 2 or 3 points, because hopefully someone later on will get you at least kind of 6 or 7, maybe even 8 points. Obviously that might not happen, right? Your players afterwards might blank, but that is how I would view it. And also you've got the potential for an outfield player to go and hit an even bigger score. So I feel like that's worth the gamble. With a goalkeeper, the ceilings are so much lower. Obviously, if a goalkeeper gets a clean sheet, loads of saves, or a penalty save, that can be huge. But most of the time, 6 points is probably in and around where they're going to get to. I think if I've already got 4, okay, I'm risking like a 2-pointer to try and get a 6, but it just doesn't seem that exciting to bother switching it. So, I mean, it will depend on who you've got to come afterwards. If it looks like a goalkeeper with almost a guaranteed clean sheet, maybe I would do it. But in most cases, I think I would stick on 4 points. I appreciate that at this stage, most Verbruggen owners have probably already had to make the decision. But if we just go back and look at it, you know, I mean, maybe people had Lunin against Romania. I mean, now it looks like a bit of hindsight to say I wouldn't do that. Maybe I would have done if I was in that position. But I don't know if I'd put a huge amount of stock in Ukraine getting a clean sheet. I mean, Casteels, maybe I would have done that as well. I think it's a close call. But I don't, even if I had Costa against the Czech, like some people might be in that position, right, where they've got Verbruggen with 4 points and Costa on the bench. I just don't think I would do it. Yes, there's a situation where the Czech Republic get a penalty and he saves it and it's a huge score. You're going to be frustrated you missed out on it. But the chances of that happening are so low. Whereas with an attacker, I think there's just more reason to gamble on the off chance that the opposition has a bad game and they walk away with a brace, player of the match, or a hat-trick, whatever it might be. Goalkeepers, I'm just not so sure. And it's a similar situation in Matchday 2. And again, it applies to other goalkeepers that aren't Verbruggen. But let's say you've got him against France and he gets 4 points. Would I twist for Casteels against Romania or Costa against Turkey? I think I'd probably stick. So 4 points seems pretty good for me. 5, I would definitely stick. 3, I'd probably risk it and go for the clean sheet. And it always sounds a bit stupid. Well, 4 you wouldn't, but 3 you would. But there has to be a cut off at some point. I think that's probably where I'm at with goalkeepers. So I'm just going to end by talking about my team. Just a quick reminder about how the squad is looking. I've got Lukaku, Kane and Mbappé up front. Then it's Gündoğan, Szoboszlai, Sudakov, Fernandes and Kvaratskhelia in midfield. I've not yet seen Portugal or Georgia play, but barring injuries, which is the same thing I said about Mbappé yesterday, they should be fine for Matchday 2 either way. In defence, Trent and Gay double up for England, Mittelstadt, DeMarco and Fars, and then my goalkeepers are Lunin and Costa. My original plan was limitless Matchday 3, then wildcard in the quarterfinals, and just to use my 2 free transfers in Matchday 2. Now, briefly last night, once Mbappé had picked up that injury, I did consider whether or not to use a chip this week, but after sleeping on it, I don't think I need it. I do have some issues in the team, but most of them are just poor performances, and I don't want to panic too much after just one game. Like Sudakov for Ukraine, Lukaku and Kane were not great, but they have not become terrible picks after just one game. I think the biggest issues in my team, which is always the thing to think about with transfers, Mbappé, I don't think he's going to play against the Netherlands. Szoboszlai, tough game against Germany. DeMarco, tough game against Spain. And then Lunin, really poor performance against Romania. I'm a little bit worried that he might get dropped. Now, even coming into the tournament, there was already kind of talk about who would be the Ukraine number 1, Lunin, or I think it's Trubin. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, but he's played a lot of games, right? And for Romania, there's no way Lunin could have stopped that first goal, but he was the one that made the clearance/pass in the first place that gave possession back to Romania. And I think it was the second goal that was also outside the box. He basically dived over the ball. He really was not that good, despite how good he might have been for Real Madrid this season. And I do think there's potential for him to be dropped. That being said, I'm not sure it's worth suddenly popping a chip or using a transfer on, because ultimately you only get to swap your goalkeeper once anyway. My goalkeeper on the bench in Costa for Portugal is the better option, right? So even if Lunin was to get nothing or not even to play against Slovakia, I've still got Costa against Turkey. So I'm not prioritising Lunin as a reason to use a transfer or a chip. So he's out of the picture. Mbappe's got to go, and I'll come on to my replacement in just a second, but he will go because I don't think he's going to play against the Netherlands. Unless we get news before the deadline, I will sell him. So then I'm only really left with Szoboszlai and DeMarco with tough fixtures. 2 players that originally I wanted to transfer in Matchday 2. My original plan was DeMarco to Vardio and Szoboszlai to an Austrian midfielder. But I think ultimately keeping one of those players is not the end of the world, right? Either Szoboszlai or DeMarco can stay in this team. So basically I'm going to do Mbappé out and then one of Szoboszlai or DeMarco. Which of those 2 players I sell, I'm not 100% sure about, right? I think with Szoboszlai, Hungary weren't great and Germany's going to be the toughest game they play in the groups, but he's on all set pieces. He takes penalties. He's going to play 90 minutes. He's definitely going to start. Could he go and nick another assist? It's possible. And if Hungary can somehow get any kind of result, he'd probably have a good chance of being man of the match or player of the match as well. Whereas DeMarco, I don't think they keep a clean sheet against Spain, but possibly gets an attacking return when he's basically playing left wing. So one of those two players will be sold. Right now, I think I'm leaning more towards keeping Szoboszlai and selling DeMarco, but it will depend on who I bring in for Mbappé because of what I spoke about earlier with captaincy in Matchday 2. Because ultimately, as it stands, on Friday, let's say I've not got Mbappé, the only options I've got to captain are Sudakov or Lunin against Slovakia. Now, I will have the team sheets before I have to make the decision, so I'll know whether Lunin's playing. But Sudakov just doesn't scream great captain to me. And maybe having just one of the days without a solid option doesn't matter. Like, I could just captain Gündoğan and then Kane, then Sudakov, and then Fernandes or Lukaku. It's not the end of the world. But it is in the back of my mind. Maybe I could just bring in a player to captain. So Szoboszlai to Sabitzer or Baumgartner would give me a captain for Austria, right? And if I'm going to do that, then I would get Ronaldo for Mbappe. But another option, just to ramble through this, is to get rid of Mbappe for Griezmann, because he's definitely going to start and he's probably going to be on penalties as well. And I probably would captain him against the Netherlands, because if they're going to score, he's got a good chance of being involved. And if they get a penalty, he will almost certainly take it. And that would give me 2 million in the bank. And I could basically go for anyone, right? I can't go for Bellingham because I'm already tripping up on England. I can't quite get to De Bruyne, but anyone else I could get for Szoboszlai, and the same for DeMarco. So I think right now my plan is to do Mbappe to Griezmann, keep Szoboszlai, and probably get Vardio. Although I will say I've got a slot open and the money to get Cancelo instead. And if he starts and he does really well today, then I would definitely consider just getting Cancelo instead of Vardio and just keep Szoboszlai. The other option is keep DeMarco, hope he can just get an attacking return against Spain, and maybe do Szoboszlai to Wirtz instead, because I would have the money, right? And I don't have triple Germany. So that's an option. If I go the Ronaldo route, then unless I do Szoboszlai to an Austrian midfielder, hopefully you're following along, I would have to then captain Sudakov against whoever they've got. I've forgotten now, Slovakia, right? Yeah, on that Friday. That captaincy on Friday is playing on my mind, because I look at it and I know that Ronaldo is a better option than Griezmann. But I think for captaincy perspective, having Griezmann is better. But when I look at it like that, right, Ronaldo and Wirtz. So essentially, like, it's Ronaldo, Wirtz, and DeMarco, or I don't know, Griezmann, Wirtz, or Griezmann, Wirtz, and DeMarco. I mean, it's got to be Ronaldo, right? I think it's got to be this way around. No, so I guess it's. So I'm doing this on the fly. I guess if I want the captaincy on Friday, it's Ronaldo, Sabitzer, and DeMarco, or it's Griezmann, Wirtz, and DeMarco, or I keep Szoboszlai and just get rid of DeMarco for Vardio, which is another option. Either way, I'm not taking a hit. I don't like if you've got Szoboszlai and you've got a spare transfer, sell him, but don't take a hit. It's not worth it. So that's my options. I'm not sure which way around. Basically, Griezmann or Ronaldo up front. Maybe Wirtz or one of the Austrian midfielders, and then possibly Vardio in defence or Cancelo. It's basically two of those three potential transfers. If I had to say right now, I think I'm going to go Griezmann, because I think he's quite low owned. He's 7% owned. It's actually a bit higher than I thought. And I think Cancelo over... If he looks good today, I'm going to go Cancelo over Vardio and just keep Szoboszlai. That's my thoughts. That's my team. I'm leaving it there. If you've enjoyed it, give it a like, hit that subscribe button. Rate 5 stars if you listen on podcast. This is the final video ahead of Matchday 2 deadline. There will be one video for Matchday 3, but I am probably going to have to record it before most of the Matchday 2 games have even finished. So I'll see what I can do. There won't be a final thoughts video and stuff like that for Matchday 3, but I will have all that usual good stuff ahead of all the knockout rounds. So in terms of content, the only Matchday where it's going to be slightly less than usual is Matchday 3. I can only apologise, but that is life. Sometimes it does get in the way. But for the knockouts onwards, we're looking good. Thanks for watching. Good luck in Matchday 2, and I'll catch you again soon.